lions, because the lions are directly in front of me. Seems as though they're on a kill of some sort. I don't quite know what it is just yet, so I'm going to... When we see the Styx Pride, it's not often that we get to see them, so I'm looking forward to catching up with them for a little bit and spending some time. There's some little cubs that are feeding. Hello, guys. It's good to see the Styx Pride. It's been a while since I've seen them. A few vultures are around as well. But how cool is that? It looks like they've got a waterbuck. That's what they've managed to bring down on Chitwa's massive open area right in front of the lodge. So those guests must have had a wonderful day of watching lions feeding all day long. And look at the fat little bellies of those cubs. They are full. So nice to see them, and their mange is not looking too bad as well. They're looking a little bit better than the last time I actually saw them, which is good news. There's one or two that are a little bit mangy, but not as bad as I thought they would be. They seem to be coming right a little bit, and hopefully they'll be able to just last long enough for the rain. Once the rain comes along, then we're going to have a situation where these guys will be absolutely fine. Remember that the mite in mange proliferates during the dry period. As soon as we start to go into a wet period, then they start to calm right down, and the mites start to disappear, and the little ones then will stop itching, they'll stop scratching, and their fur will grow back nicely, just like the Angama cubs has, and they'll be okay. Look at the one on top of the tree there, just poking its head over the top. There's a fallen over tree, and there's just one little head that's, oh no, it's come down again, unfortunately. Oh, there it is. You see this little head just poking over? What are you doing? Oh no, now you're down again. I was having a little game on top there. So none of the tiny cubs are here. They've only just been born, so they won't be introduced to meat yet. For those of you that don't know, the third female gave birth, it was about, what is it now, 4 or 5 weeks ago. Very similar age, maybe a little bit older than the Angama cubs that we've got, so it's somewhere around there. So the third female, I don't see her at the moment. I think, oh no, no, I don't see her at the moment. I think she maybe is with those small little cubs after feeding. They often will go to the little cubs to go and get food, but the other cubs out here have bellies the size of beach balls. They can hardly move at the moment. They're kind of waddling around, which is great to see. So very cool to see the pride at least feeding well, and this will all help with combating those mites. Aiden, who's 6 years old. Hello, Aiden. I hope you're having a nice day. You want to know whether the lions will swim in the dam here. No, Aiden, they're not going to swim. The lions are a bit scared of water. They don't like water on their coats. Also, today is very cold, so they don't want to go into the water, because then they're going to be wet and cold and miserable. And there's crocodiles, and crocodiles are very dangerous for especially little lion cubs. I've actually seen a lion cub being killed by a crocodile, and so you have to be very careful with crocodiles. And so the lions will avoid the water. They'll go and drink there, but they're not going to go and swim in the water at all. Even if it was hot and it was really warm and the lions were having a tough time dealing with all the heat, they still won't go swim in the water because of the crocodiles. They're going to be very scared of the crocodiles, and rightly so. Crocodiles are animals that you have to be very nervous of. Now, we've actually got some waterbuck that are still right here close to us that are watching the lions feed. I wonder if it maybe wasn't a youngish one from one of these adults, and that's, or maybe it was the mother for one of them, and that's why they're sitting just watching the pride feed on them, which is not very nice, but it is the way it goes. It's how life works out here, and you'll find that sometimes if it's a mother or a young one for that mother, they will spend hours just watching the lions feed off them as they kind of work out what's going on and try and come to terms with the loss. There comes a hooded vulture that's going to land directly on the branch. That's very nice, isn't that wonderful to have a hooded vulture sort of at eye level close to us? It's a very cool sight. Now, the hooded vultures are the ones that will feed right at the end. They're going to be the ones that will get food only at the end of this carcass. They're going to basically be the last birds to get nutrition out of this. In fact, you'll find the whitebacks first, and then the hyenas, and then only will the hooded vulture get food later. And there's the whiteback vultures are on top, and there's a number of them still arriving. The clouds are seeming to part, a bit of sunshine is coming out, and that means we're going to get a situation where it will be perfect conditions for vultures to fly. It will be a bit windy, but it's going to be nice thermals that will start coming out, and they'll find this fairly quickly and then come and try and finish that carcass once the lions move off. Lynn, you're asking why is it that the Styx Pride always gets mange? It's not that they always get mange, they just haven't recovered from the mange from last year. Remember, it's not exactly been a very wet year, and so the mange itself is still present in the adult females, and so they've had their young ones, and then unfortunately what's happened is that they've continued to carry that mange, and as it's gotten dry again, so it's proliferated and expanded and has gotten onto them. Also remember that the females, even though they're able to deal with the mite, the cubs, when they're younger, their immune systems are not as good. They also lie together a lot, whereas the females will kind of separate themselves a little bit more, groom themselves a bit better, whereas the cubs are rubbing up and constantly in contact, and so that mite crosses between them a lot. That, coupled with the fact that you've got a situation, oh, look at those faces, how cute is that? And that's coupled with the fact that these cubs, like I say, have a weaker immune system than the adults, means that they get the mite a little bit worse. Remember, the cubs from last year died, and these are new cubs, so that mite was introduced to them when they were still young, and that's why they've been battling with it. If we get a few years of wetter weather, and these cubs survive, and they build up an immunity to it, then the next dry season they should be a lot better off than what they are currently. You can see the older cubs in the background, they actually look a lot better than the newer cubs. So the one that's waddling off there, they look a lot healthier. Sea Cantrell, do you asking if lions always carry the mange mite? Yes, they do. In fact, most animals carry the mange mite. Even people have mange on them. It's tiny, tiny little mites that live in the hair. It's completely natural. It occurs. But like I say, when it goes through a period of very dry conditions, that's when that mange populates, and you'll have a situation where it will get really out of control, and particularly in younger animals. The adults tend to be able to deal with it a lot better, but the younger ones tend to get a little bit out of control. Now, I do apologize if you guys are picking up a lot of wind. It's just here on Chitwa Open, it is completely clear of any vegetation, and that means it really blows through here, and we get a situation where it's going to gust, and so I do apologize if the wind sound is quite loud. There's unfortunately very little that I can do with the wind. It would be nice if it did stop. At least it's blowing these clouds away, and we at least have a nice clear sky above us. So hopefully tomorrow will bring about a little bit warmer weather and far less wind than we've experienced today. But how beautiful is the light on the Styx Pride? I mean, it's early afternoon, but it's beautiful. Ooh. Okay, you're wondering if the notches in the ears are caused by the mange. Not necessarily. It might be they've scratched and they've caused scabbing and they've caused a bit of injury to their ears that is now healing, and you're getting those little notches that have formed. It also can be ticks. So ticks also feed off the ears of cats, and they cause these little V's, as well as fighting around carcasses. You saw just now that the two little cubs were giving each other a bit of a hard time and belting one another, and that will cause a little bit of scarring and scrapes on the ears every now and then. But most of that's to do with the mange. It itches, and they scratch the ear and they cut it, and they cause a little bit of a disturbance around the ears and around the face. And in fact, when you see mange, it often is really bad around the muzzle area, the ear area, and then underneath the belly. If you look at Tinyo, he's still got a little bit of that mange on his tummy as well. So it's normally in the warmer places, the more difficult to reach places where they battle to groom, that it proliferates and causes a little bit of damage. So but these lions are going to be very, very content by the end of this afternoon. They are probably loving the fact that they have a nice meal that will help also with the colder weather. If they've got a meal, the body will be using energy to try and stay warm, and so this meal will just help keep that going. They've also got water close by. It's nice and open, so now with a bit of sun in the afternoon, I'm sure the little cubs are loving it. You can see the fact that they're lying, most of them, out in the open. It shows you that they're not worried about the heat of the sun at all. In fact, they're probably enjoying that little bit of heat. But that carcass is all but done. Jared's buddy, you say you've never seen the Styx Pride before. How old are these cubs? Well, the Styx Pride, so we don't see them that often. They spend a lot of time to the south of us. But in terms of the ages of the cubs, you've got two older cubs, which are the ones on the far left at the back there, behind the female. So those two that are lying down at the back. And they must be now 9-10 months, I think, somewhere around there. They're maybe a little bit older. I'm just trying to remember exactly when the first time I saw them was. It's been a while since I've seen the Styx Pride too, but somewhere around there is when they were born. And then these newer cubs are about 6 months old, so they're a little bit smaller and are not as large as what we see with the others. Now look at this vulture is going to come in and, no, it landed short. I thought it was going to come and land just on the termite mound above the lions. I think it wanted to, and then it realized, hang on a second, that's not a good idea to land right on top of the lions, and just pulled out and then stopped right where it was. But it's really cool to watch the vultures in this wind, because the wind holds them up. This one's coming down now as well, Senzo. It might be quite nice. Unfortunately, it's gone behind the tree, but let's see. The wind is just holding it, so it's, for filming, is really cool, because they come over fairly slowly and then they just turn. Oh no, it's caught the wind and is now gone off. But as they come in, it's quite nice because they just sort of float and glide in, which is very cool. Jared's buddy, the vultures, no, they won't start getting close to this carcass yet because there's cubs around eating. If you see behind that cub's backside, there's one vulture, it's a little bit further away. You'll find that the hooded vultures generally are a bit more brazen and will come a little bit closer. There's a few vultures talking behind us. In fact, actually, it's tawny eagles building a nest by the looks of things behind us that are making some noise. But if you look behind that cub, look, the cub's trying to drag the carcass. That's so cool. What are you doing? But there's a female there. There's a big adult female, so if any vulture came anywhere near, that female is going to chase those vultures away. So the vultures have got no chance whatsoever. Even with the cubs, they won't risk it. These lionesses would chase those vultures long before they got anywhere near. And the cubs themselves, I suppose if they were by themselves and no adult females, which would be pretty much impossible with lions, then maybe they would bully the cubs off. But you know, there's always going to be some adults around that will protect them from these vultures, so they've got nothing to worry about. So the vultures will only get this once the lionesses take the cubs away and they move off completely, which will be shortly. You'll find a situation where they're going to come off at some point. Now, you can see there's a do they have a kill up there? So it seems like the tawny eagles behind us are making a bit of noise. You can see one right at the top. And Senzo says he thinks that one of them's got something in its talons. So I wonder if they haven't got some sort of food up there. Maybe they got a piece of this carcass, or they got something that they're feeding on. I don't know, difficult to say. A lot of talking going on between those two. Unfortunately, there's the lighters in the way, our presenter light, so Senzo's battling. Hold on, Senzo, let me just turn you slightly. I'm going to just try and see, because I want to see exactly what these guys are eating, whether they got a piece of the carcass or whether it's just some other food item that they've got. So where do you see it there, Senzo? Is it in with the bird itself or above it? The bird itself? No, that one's got nothing in its talons that I can see. Has it got something in its talons? Jeff, you're asking what type of carnivorous birds visit or are in the Sabi sands. Jeff, there are lots of carnivorous birds. Remember that the insect eaters are also considered part of that. But in terms of out-and-out meat eaters, vultures, tawny eagles, battalier eagles, and of the vulture species, there's 5 that we see here regularly. Well, 4 regularly, 1 not so much. What other birds of prey are eating strictly meat? A number of the sparrowhawks, pretty much all the eagles. We've got falcons, we've got normal hawks, goshawks. So lots of different straight out and out meat eaters that we get in this particular area. We're very fortunate that we see a lot of different birds of prey, and it's a wonderful place for birding, the Sabi sands. It's amazing watching these birds actually coming in. Here comes another tawny eagle straight over us, and look how it's going to land right here. There we go. Look how it just hovered in. Amazing. You see how much control these birds have got and how they use those wings, and they just sort of slowly descend down and then drop onto the branch. It's an incredible way that they do things. So that's the tawny eagle, which are generally around carcasses. It's very common to see them in this area. They do like to scavenge as well. So, you asking, do I hope that the Egyptian vulture will fly down to the Sabi Sands every single moment of the day? I know it was seen a couple days ago, but far north of us, and I keep wishing that I see it drifting into this carcass, and I see it here, but alas, no luck so far. Hopefully, though, I'll get spoiled and one day see it. For those of you that don't know what we're talking about, the Egyptian vulture is a very, very rare vulture species. In fact, it shouldn't really occur here, but there is one young individual, a juvenile, that for some reason has found itself in the Kruger National Park. And we are getting regular sightings in the Kruger Park area north of us, and I'm really hoping that at some point it comes down to the Sabi Sands. And imagine if we see it on one of these carcasses, because I think it would be a first record for the Sabi Sands. And as far as I know, no Egyptian vultures have ever been seen in the Sabi Sands before, so it would be a wonderful thing to see the Egyptian vultures in this area. So I'm hoping one day. And for those of you who are wondering what the Egyptian vulture looks like, this is the bird that we're talking about over here. So the adult is a beautiful white coloration. It's not the prettiest head that it's got. It's got a bright yellow face and a beady red eye, but it's got this white coloration, and those are easy to spot. But the bird we're talking about is this one over here. So it's a sub-adult. It's got this, well, juvenile should I say, it's got this dark pigmentation, a grey-blue facial patch and slender beak, but the big identifying feature is this very diamond-shaped tail. No other vulture has a diamond-shaped tail as prominent as what you see there. The only bird we could confuse it with, and why it went unnoticed for so long, is the juvenile hooded vulture. So if we have a look at the bottom here, this is the juvenile hooded vulture, and you can see, look how similar those two birds look. And it's very, very, very difficult to tell them apart. In flight is the best way, and you see they've got a much more rounded tail than that diamond tail that we saw, or wedge tail that we saw on the Egyptian vulture. But maybe one day I'll be lucky enough to find it. I certainly hope so. It would really make my day if I did see one of those, because that would be another one we could add to the list of Brent not seeing in the Sabi Sands that we've seen. Right, back into position for our lions, because where we are now, the trees in the way. Let's go around quickly the side. Truth be told, you're asking lifespan of a vulture and how long do they live for? Well, here in the wild, generally we find our vultures living between sort of 15 and 20 years for the most part. Unfortunately, a lot of our vultures are going under a bit of threat at the moment. They're dying due to poisoning of carcasses. Also, a lot of them are flying into electrical lines, and so the numbers are not quite as much as what we would hope for. But about 15 to 20 years is mostly what we see from them here in the Sabi Sands. Obviously, that's quite generic across the 5 species that we do see. In fact, 6 species if we include the Egyptian vulture in this area. In captivity, I believe there's been some that have recorded to go over 20, but here that would be very uncommon in the wild. It's generally the case with any wild animals that you have a situation where wild animals will be far less able to survive longer because of how hard the rigors of being in the wild are. Now, it's interesting what I was watching now. The little cub was dragging the carcass, and Mom stepped in and just kind of chased it away from where it was and is now busy feeding herself. So she's kind of pulled the carcass off from where the cub was, and the poor little cub is now sitting watching Mom feed, which is not ideal for that little one. The interesting thing though is if you look at the cubs, they are so full and so round, but if you look at the adult females, not nearly as much as what the cubs are. So their bellies aren't as round, so they've obviously let the cubs feed more than anything else, and they'll then clean up what's left. They would have got at least a little bit of a meal, but the cubs are more important. They need the nutrition, and so you'll find that they'll let those cubs feed quite a bit as well. And that waterbuck is small, and now that we can see the rib cage, it's a baby waterbuck, so I'm sure that other waterbuck that we saw watching is potentially its mother that's just watching what's going on, unfortunately. Jared's buddy, you're saying that I mentioned that these cubs are on the small side. Well, I didn't mean that they were on the small side in terms of in relation to other cubs. They're pretty normal for their ages. I was just mentioning small cubs is in relation to the other cubs within the pride. So there's 2 older cubs that are bigger, and then there's the 4 younger, smaller cubs that are those ones. Well, that's actually the adult female, but behind them is the 2 older ones, and then there's the 4 smaller ones that are around as well. Why are you growling at us? So one of the females has just growled at us. I don't know, maybe there's another cub edging in behind it. It's very strange for a lioness to growl. So in relation to the Angama cubs, though, they are probably very similar at the same sort of age. There's not too much difference between them. They definitely are not in any way too small or not developed enough. They're pretty healthy and pretty regular or average for their age. So they're not massive and they're not small. They're okay, and the mange won't influence their size. Remember, mange is just influencing their coat and also influencing their ability to hold on to water. So they dehydrate very quickly when they've got mange, and so you'll find that these guys, that's part of the reason why they die, is they actually get into a situation where they dehydrate quite a bit. So it's not going to affect their size, though. As long as they're getting food and they're getting nutrients, they're going to be absolutely fine, and they will grow just like any other lion cubs would. I didn't do it. They most definitely will eat the hide and the skin. If you look at that carcass and you look around, there's no skin or hide anywhere to be seen. So a waterbuck has a very hairy, very sort of thick fur, and you can see the fur is all around. So they will lick the fur off and pull the fur off with their teeth, but they will not worry about eating the skin. They will eat the skin or the hide of this animal. It's got nutrition. There's a bit of a fat layer on it, and there's lots to be gained from eating that. So they definitely will eat that hide. They just try and avoid eating the fur. So they'll lick the fur off or try and bite the fur off using those front teeth, but the hide itself they will definitely consume. You'll be surprised how much of this they're going to eat. So you'll find that the females will even crunch through those rib bones a little bit, and maybe even some of the leg bones. And then the hyenas, if they find this, will pretty much clean up most of that. The vultures will be left with very little, unless they can get in before the hyenas arrive, which I'm sure all these vultures will be hoping is the case. But really good to see the Styx Pride. I didn't realize that they had a carcass this morning, otherwise we would have come this way, and it was nice to at least see the Angama Pride. But really good to see the Styx and to see them at least feeding, and the cubs, I promise you, are looking a lot better than what they were the last time I saw them. So it's amazing what a little meal does. It makes them definitely look a lot fuller and healthier, and I'm sure at some point, how is that one lying? That one almost looks as though it's got its legs spread out on either side and it's just kind of flat tummy on its belly. What are you doing, little one? But that is as round as it is tall at this stage. There we go, that looks more comfy. Mr. Crowley, lions surviving without food is obviously dependent on what they ate last and how much of it they got. So it's about 2 weeks until they are absolutely emaciated and are really battling to find food. And the problem with a lion is, as it gets more and more starving, and it gets weaker and weaker and harder for it to hunt. So about 2 weeks without food, and you'll find that cat is emaciated and really starting to become very weak, and the chances of it surviving is quite slim. But for the most part, like I say, it also depends on conditions and if it's hot or if it's cold, or how far it's having to move given other lions in that area, because that will also consume its energy. But 2 weeks is a rough sort of estimate as to when they desperately will need food. I have seen a lion that went 2.5 weeks without food. It was literally wasted away, but then it got a meal and actually bounced back from there. So they can go, I would say, maybe 3 weeks at the most, but 2 weeks is about the sort of average for lions. And a meal like this for this female, you can see she's not exactly full. She doesn't have a big round tummy at all, not like the cubs. So she would be, after 2 weeks of not eating, would be absolutely famished. She would be really kind of wasting away. So they, at the end of the day, will consume their own body when they're basically starving. So their muscles start to break down, and the body, like I say, basically eats itself to try and survive. And so muscle atrophy is huge, and their condition then weakens, and it becomes harder and harder for them to come back from that. Now we're going to sit with our Styx Pride probably a little bit longer. There are quite a few people that want to come here. At the end of the day, Chitwa has quite a number of different lodges that traverse this area. And so while our female plays with the shoulder blade or the hip joint, I can't decide which, let's go to Brent, who's got his own lions on his own kill. Well, they are very fat and lazy, Brenty. Although we had a little cub that was up on the tree. It was super cool. He was lying on the log and it was almost leopard-like in the way that it was looking. So it was a very cool little picture to see this little lion cub resting on top of the tree. It was really quite pretty. And we had the perfect light on it at one time. And in the background you can see there's one that's playing a game of hide and seek behind the termite mound. You can just see a little head popping out from behind there. There we go. You see, you little one. What you doing behind there? It's, like I say, a bit sleepy, almost using that termite mound to block itself from the wind. The wind is coming from that direction, so it's actually doing a good job of being blocked. And the rest of them are strewn out by the two cubs that are feeding with the female. You can see they've dragged the carcass quite far around now. And so they're just having a last little feed on that. I reckon they're going to abandon this carcass tonight. I don't think they'll still be here tomorrow by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think they'll go far, but they're definitely not going to be still on the carcass. There'll be very little left by an hour or two's time. You can see they're already just cleaning up the bones, licking off the little bits of meat, using those rough tongues and trying to get as much kind of out of it as possible. But there really isn't very much left anymore. The females, if they decide to feed the two of them, are going to clean that up very quickly. But what a wonderful sighting with the Styx Pride, an unexpected one as well. So not only is it good, but it's also unexpected. I didn't think we would see the Styx Pride. They've been, especially now with the new cubs, I would have thought that they might be spending most of their time to the south of us, where they've got the cubs on vessels and Lynette's property. And so it's a nice surprise that they've moved up this way and are at least on Chitwa, and hopefully we'll see a lot of them over the next few months if they spend time around Chitwa area, and then also coming every now and then into Vulture. They've been seen 3 times in the last month on Vulture, which is interesting because prior to that it was a long period that we went without seeing the Styx Pride anywhere near Vulture camp, or even on Djuma anywhere. And so it's been nice that they've been sort of poking their nose in around Twin Dams and spending a bit of time in that area. It certainly is a nice surprise when we get them every now and then. And like I say, they are a little bit sort of mangy and not as good looking as the Angama Pride, but they are a pride steeped with history. This pride has been in the area and in the Sabi Sand and known by a lot of people for as long as the Sabi Sands has really had tourists coming in. So they were one of the first prides that was ever sort of named and ever followed, and so they have got a lot of history. And in my time here in the Sabi Sands, unfortunately, I've watched this pride just get decimated by the rolling coalitions. So Michael, you're asking if I know how successful the Styx have been at raising cubs. Well, the answer to that is in the time that I've known them, pretty horrific. As I was saying, they've really had a tough time of it. They've had a number of coalitions come through and they've just really battled to keep their cubs alive. So when I first started, there was 11 adult lions in the Styx Pride. There was, well, when I say adult, there was a couple sub-adults and a sub-adult male. The sub-adult male then went off on his own, unfortunately ended up with a dislocated hip and a very badly injured face, and he unfortunately succumbed to those injuries. And then since then they've really struggled to raise any cubs. There's been one young female that's been raised, and other than that, nothing. They've lost pretty much the majority of their cubs, and this hopefully will mean that there's going to be a little bit more success when it comes to cubs this year. Hopefully we're going to end up with a situation where we get some little ones making it, and this kind of strengthens the pride, because at the end of the day the 3 females are all fairly on the older side. They're not young individuals, and so it would be nice if we get some females that last and the continuation of the Styx Pride can happen, and we end up with the pride rebuilding and becoming the strength that it once was. It's sad when I see the Styx Pride. I always feel sorry for them. They've really been battered hard. They were first hit by the Mpochos, then they were hit by the Majingalans, then the Matimbers, and then after that the Birmingham. So they've really gone through a lot of male coalitions, and that's all since 2010. So in 7 years they've dealt with 4 male lion coalitions, and if you work out that cubs generally are only kind of adults or left alone by the males between 2.5 and 3, you can work out very quickly that 4 coalitions in 7 years means that they've just not had time to raise any of their cubs before the new males come in and kill all those cubs. So they've really struggled, and I'm hoping that this is a bit of change of luck. The Birminghams are young males, they've done really well, and so I'm pretty sure that we're going to be in a situation where they hopefully will be able to survive and to be able to grow and become big adults and once again build the Styx Pride into a powerful force that it should be. But look at the size of the belly of that little cub that's lying down. Like I say, his belly is bigger than it is tall, basically. It's just round and big, and you can see a little bit of callousing of the mange, but it's actually, like I say, a lot better than the last time I saw these little ones. They're looking really in much better condition. Stevie, the only part of the prey that they don't go after is bones that are too big for them. So sometimes leg bones and vertebra, and then also the stomach content itself. So they won't eat the rumen of this animal. But otherwise, everything else is fair game. You'll find that they'll go after rib bones, they'll eat the hides, they'll eat organs, they eat any of the meat, obviously. They'll eat the eyes, they'll eat the ears. You can see she's actually busy feeding on the ear at the moment. I think that was the last bit of the ear that went down the gullet just now. So pretty much everything other than the big bones that they really battle to be able to consume. And then of course the hair they also don't like to eat, so they'll try and pluck the hair and get rid of that so they don't have to deal with that. But this wind is really not dying down. I thought it would, but it seems to be just carrying on and really going a bit crazy still. So I was hoping we would see the end of it this evening, but that doesn't seem like it's going to happen. It seems as though we're going to be punished by wind a little bit longer, and we're going to really have a rough night of it in the end of the day. It's not going to be as pleasant as I thought it would be. I wanted it to be a nice, beautiful, calm evening, because that would have been a wonderful way to... So, Lou, you reckon a bush kite and go fly it? I reckon. Either that, or imagine trying to fly a vulture. That would be quite crazy. So you wouldn't want to add anything to a vulture and try and follow them, because they are moving around all over the place at the moment. We're seeing them kind of jumping around and flying in, and the speed at which they move when the wind takes them is quite incredible. So forget a bush kite, we have a bush vulture that we can operate, or better yet, a drone would be quite cool. A drone would have been a very cool way to have watched what was going on. So hopefully at some stage soon we'll unleash the drone again. But here comes the vulture. Look at this, how cool is that? And it's going to just slowly float upwards, and then it will open the wings and slow right down and land. There we go. Not the softest of landing, that particular one, and in fact it even landed on a small branch that I thought might fall. Imagine if one of these lions got a branch to the head. That would certainly not impress them at all, given that they can't get to those vultures. But I'm also watching very carefully for one of them that's about to defecate, because I feel like these lions are in danger of being defecated on by vultures. And I can assure you, I've seen somebody being defecated on by a vulture. It is not a funny experience. It is a lot that comes out of a vulture's back end and causes quite a big mess. So if I was a lion, I would be very careful where I was sitting right now. They're right in the firing line for these vultures at the moment, and hopefully they'll be okay and they won't end up with a situation where they're going to end up with some, well, the proverbial egg on the face, as they say. Is that one fallen asleep on the carcass? It looks like it has. Looks like there's a little one that's decided to have a little nap on the carcass. Nancy, you're asking if vultures ever make their own kills, or do they wait for others to do it? Well, Nancy, they pretty much are scavengers. They do not kill things for themselves. I've never seen a vulture kill anything. Most of the time, well, 100% of the time, they are scavenging off carcasses of other individuals. So they're going to things like this, lion carcasses or animals that have died, and then feeding off those. So they are scavengers out and out. They're not designed to be able to feed on the wing or to be able to catch their own prey items, and so you'll find them pretty much just going from carcass to carcass. And you must remember, there are a lot of carcasses in the bush. There's a lot of things that die regularly, and there's some really large large carcasses. So things like elephants and hippos and buffalo, when they die, that's food for a long period, and sometimes those don't get found by lions if they die of natural causes, and the vultures can have an absolute field day. So there's more than enough for them to survive as scavengers out here, and it's unfortunately why their numbers have declined somewhat. Look, I love how the hooded vultures run around. Like I say, they're the most brazen of all of them, so they'll try to come in here and see if they can steal a little morsel from somewhere. I wonder if the lion that's behind the termite mound is about to give this vulture a big surprise, because it's slowly but surely heading towards the termite mound where our little lion is tucked away, and I don't know if that vulture has seen that lion. But it'll be funny if it doesn't go see that lion and that lion comes bursting around and chasing them off. Right, but unfortunately we're going to have to start moving on because there are others that want to come into the sighting. So I'm going to leave the Styx Pride now, let them finish off their Waterbuck kill, and we're going to start heading across towards the Angama Pride, so hopefully that we can get the Birminghams roaring as the sun sets. But while we do that, let's go back to Brent and his feasting lions all the way on the other side of Africa.